Hey chemistry kids, here's the second talk on matter and energy. First talk was about matter and how they kind of worked out and where they kind of fit in. So we covered these two things in the first video, and this one, yeah, we covered those three things in the first video. So check out the first video on classification of matter if you want to check out those. Here we go. Let's talk about processes that matter is going to go through. So when describing matter, there's something called what's a physical process. And this is something basically, on the most basic level, you can observe. All right. So like color would fall under that. Density, you can see if things float. What else could fall into there? Smell. These are all things you can observe. All right. So things you can readily observe without changing the state. It's a physical property. Whereas a chemical property is things you observe when a reaction, RxN is reaction, when a reaction is happening. For example, like for something, a chemical property, well, how flammable something is. Okay, so if something starts on fire real easily, it's going to be flammable. That's a little closer. So flammable would be one. How it reacts to like vinegar. So a reaction with, say, vinegar. Things like that. Reaction with oxygen to produce rust. That would be a chemical property. So what's things you observe when a reaction is happening. What's a physical change? Where a physical change is, it changes, keeps the identity. Keeps same substance. All right, so the same substance. So like for example, when I go from a solid to a liquid, that would be a physical change because you're still maintaining the integrity of the substance, which in some cases could be water, but it's still the same substance, still with the same properties. All right, whereas a chemical change, you have two or more substances that make a new substance with new properties. Okay? So for example, if I took like a clear liquid and I took two clear liquids and say I made a purple liquid. All right, that would be a chemical because it's got new properties, new things you can observe. All right, so make sure you guys can distinguish what's a physical property, what's a chemical property, physical change, chemical change. Sometimes it can be a little bit tougher, but it should be fairly clear. When things go through a chemical change, there's signs. There's 4 signs. First one, there is an energy change. Okay, energy change. So that means it could get hot or cold. That means it could make a sound. That means it could give off light. So all those are forms of energy. All right. 2, you would probably say a color change. So a color change would be it goes from, say, clear to blue or something like that. It's not from clear to clear, or not, say if I'm combining two things like a clear substance and a blue substance and now it's light blue. That's not a color change. It's got to be a different, unique new color. Third thing, bubbles. Bubbles, which is a fancy way of saying gas is given off. All right, so that could be a smell. You could see these bubbles. They might be really vigorous, almost like it's boiling, or it could be really subtle, like just a couple bubbles here and there. And the fourth thing is a precipitate forms. Okay, what's a precipitate? Not a precipitation. Precipitate is when you take two liquids and they make a solid. All right, so it could be very subtle. It could just get really cloudy. It could just be a big color change. Those are all things that could happen in there. All right, what affects how fast a reaction could happen? All right, so things that could affect it would be like temperature, agitation. Agitation is another way of stirring. Temp, agitation. So like if I raise the temperature or decrease the temperature, agitation, stirring like with a stirring stick or something like that. All those things could fall in there. There's a couple other ones, but the big ones that we are going to run into are temperature and agitation. All right. And then when you go down even further, chemical changes can be endothermic or exothermic. How can you tell? Well, you can tell by if they get warm or if they get cold. Because remember, endothermic means you're putting energy in, and exo, giving energy off. So this one could get hot, whereas this one could get cold. Those are going to be the two most evident ones. You could also do something where you do a change of energy, like in joules. It could be negative. You could even talk about Gibbs free energy, but that's going to be way beyond what this class is about. So these are processes that matter is going to go through, and things that you can actually record down about matter, whether they're going through a physical change, chemical change, how you can tell, how you can make it happen faster or slower, and what type of reactions could happen, like endothermic versus exothermic. This is a common misconception with kids, endo and exothermic, so you're going to talk more and more about that as time goes on. So there's your second part of the matter discussion. Hope it was good, and we'll see you soon.